Okay, so today's demo is going to be on our brand new, some of you already have it.
I will put this over.
Yep. So brand new resin kit, and if I put it under there, is it even, oh yes, beautiful. So that's the kit. You also get the other part, which is the resin. Okay, so it's both those bits together. It's £20, and we hand-picked the bezels to go in it, and we also picked the products to go in it, so we gave you a bit of a choice. But you also have, I'll give you a sneak peek, there is a little quick sneak peek, there is a little free gift in there. So you've got one extra bezel, so you've got 4 little pendant blanks, and you also have a little surprise gift in there to make an extra bezel. So I'm only going to show you the 3 that we've got on here today, because those little free gifts might not last forever.
No,
they might be just an introductory thing that we did, just to give you a little free gift and a surprise. So let's start with our resin. So we do teach this as a class. Obviously it's a bit fuller than this, and this is just a little sample taster of the resin, and it's a fantastic thing to use for your jewellery making. There are so many things that you can include in your resin, so we chose 2 or 3 little bits that we wanted to put into it for you to have a go with. So you had 3 little bezels, which are these little silver metal pieces, and these are to make pendants. However, you can add a jump ring and add them onto keychains. You can add them onto zip charms, purse charms, bag charms, bracelets if you wish. They are a little bit big for a bracelet, but you can do if you want to. And inside our kit we have some little sequins as one of the pieces, and these are Fimo slices. So they are Fimo polymer clay, and they're sliced really, really thinly, a bit like what you have put on your nails sometimes with your nail ladies. Some of those, and it's a mixture of all sorts. And also I put in, as you can see on this one here, music, so sheet music, and a little charm. Oops, let's turn it over. A little charm to stick in there with your sheet music. Oh, I've got the samples right by me, look at that, perfect. So there's the finished sheet music, there's the Fimo, and there's the little sequins. Okay, so let's move those out of the way. So you can see on this one, I've already started a little bit because obviously we don't have a massive amount of time. So with these, what I have done is use the sheets of paper that you get in the kit. So there's some white print paper and some music paper, and it's up to you. You can use the music paper for 2 of them if you can get 2 sizes out of it, or you can use all the white paper. It's entirely up to you. It's just that they look better when they've got a bit of a background behind them, a matte background. So it shows off the pieces that have been put into it nicely. Okay, so all I did was trace around my pieces and then use a little pair of scissors to cut them out. Okay, and then I used a little bit of this, just ordinary PVA white glue. I got a little bit on my finger, rubbed it into the bezel base and popped the papers in, and then I take another little bit and rub it over the top, and what that does is seal your paper so that it doesn't all go weird colours when you add the resin. Okay, so let it dry for a little bit, or run your heat gun over it, and that will help dry it off before you put your resin in. So the next thing we're going to do is, we're going to put our sequins in. Now with these, I didn't actually use any glue to keep these down, so all I did, just put them next to it. Oops, and you can be a bit generous with these, and what you need to be aware of is that they do move around. Doesn't matter if they're poking out from the resin, because they are non-organic. If they were organic, so if they were like flowers or food items that have been dried, they can deteriorate, so it would mean you might end up leaving little holes in the resin. However, with these, because they're plastic, they're not going to deteriorate, so it doesn't matter if they are sticking up above, and it just gives it a different texture as well. Okay, So I'm just going to drop these in, and be aware they are very light. I'm not going to glue them because I want them to just, nope, let's put some more over. I'm not going to glue them because it takes so long and they stick to your fingers and they get everywhere. So I just place them in just roughly, because they will move about because they are so light. So when you add your resin, they will move about a little bit, and all you need to do is just have a cocktail stick handy, or a little old paintbrush or something like that, or a pair of tweezers, one or the other, and that will work nicely just to push them back into place when you're pouring your resin. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my PVA glue and a little cocktail stick. Okay, and where I have already put my music paper in, I'm just going to, oops, sorry, I'm just going to pick up my little charm, and on the back of it, now if you've got pliers at home, cutting pliers, you can cut that little loop on the end there. You can cut that off if you wish, and just use a little nail file to sand it down so it's not got jagged edge, but you don't have to. And I'm going to put it over that little note there and just glue it down. Okay, that's that one. And then I'm going to take my glue again. I'm just going to get my finger in my gloves, and I'm just going to hold my bezel there and just rub some glue into the middle of the piece. And then I've got my Fimo slices. So if I pour a few out here, and then you just literally pick them up. Now it's up to you whether you just literally cover the base. You can do that, or you can then start like stacking them up. So once you've got your base covered, you can actually start stacking them up on top of it as well, so that it fills the whole sort of depth of the piece. You don't have to. It's just a, oh, I wish I could pick things up. There we go. So all you need to do is just fill your base, and it's up to you whether you overlap them. It's entirely your choice. You know, you decide. It's your design. And for those of you that have got the kit and have got your secret little stash of gifts, oh look, there's a little pussycat in there, you can do the same thing with those. So I would put paper behind them, and then I would literally glue them down. Some of those might be a little bit difficult to actually stack up because some of them are quite raised, so you might want to just do like one layer with those. Those of you that have got the kit, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm just going to do this outer edge, and then I'll show you the resin. Okay, so when you're doing your mixing of your resin, make sure you read through your instructions on the actual resin kit itself, because each resin that we use is different. So they're all different in the mixings that they take. And you do need a couple of either one or two disposable cups, and you can see when we show our images, we show a paper cup. It's probably better to use paper cups because obviously it's better for the environment, but I have used a couple of these little shot glasses, plastic shot glasses. Now at the moment my resin is stable, and that's because I've got the resin in one cup and the hardener in the other. It's not until we mix the two together that it starts curing and the process, the chemical process begins. So I measured them out, and I'm just going to take a lollipop stick, and I only have these coffee stirrers available today, so I'm just going to snap it in half to make it a little bit shorter. And then I can't remember which one's resin and which one's hardener, but it doesn't really matter. You just pour one into the other. Or alternatively, if you're ready to work, you can just weigh them both into the same cup. That's not a problem. So I'm just going to tip this in. Now, one of the most important things is getting the quantities right with your resin. If you go way over any of the measurements, it can affect the curing of your resin. So you do need to be fairly accurate. Just a little bit doesn't make a great deal of difference, but you do need to be fairly accurate. The other element that you need to be a bit aware of is the mixing. So you do need to mix for the recommended time. And generally, I tend to do the same with every resin that I use so that it's just consistent. I tend to do it for 3 minutes. And that seems to work for all different resins. And you just want to do it very slowly. Okay, the reason you want to do it slowly is just stopping you from developing lots of air bubbles. They do generally form air bubbles. That is part of the process of mixing it. However, if you mix it really, really fast, it can produce more air bubbles than you actually need. And they do tend to disappear by themselves. They disperse themselves as part of the process. But if you struggle and you have got a lot of air bubbles, you can grab your crafting heat gun and just give it a waft over very quickly over the top of your resin, and those little bubbles will disperse. Also, if you're not colouring your resin, which you wouldn't be doing with these pieces, you can actually pour the resin onto your bezels and use the heat gun on them once you've poured the resin over. But just be careful, because if your heat guns are very forceful, it can actually cause like a tidal wave in the resin and it can suddenly fly out of your bezel. So just be very, very careful when you start doing it. Take it from being farther away first, and then bringing it slightly closer. So once you've mixed it up, and I probably won't mix it for the recommended amount of time because I want to show you how to do it. We tend to say to pour our resin, but actual fact, we don't really want to just tip our resin out over our pieces, okay? When you've got large pieces in moulds, it's okay to actually pour, but when you've got small pieces like this, the best way to use it and to be able to keep control of it is to use it by dripping. So get some on your stick and drip it into your piece. You have a bit more control over it then. Okay, now don't worry if it does fly over the sides, if it does flood, that's not a problem. When your resin dries, when it cures, you will be able to snap off any bits when it's all clear and hardened. And what you really want to do is, once you've poured your resin, is you want to get down at the table's height and just look really carefully at the level of your resin, just to make sure you haven't got any dimples in it, sort of thing. So you can have little pockets where it's not actually caught the resin. Okay, so let's just pop this round here. So you can see it doesn't take very long, and you do have a great deal of control over it. Now, one of the things that I have found with these bezels is that the actual loop that creates the bezel drop is slightly protruding at the back. It's just the nature of how they sit. So what I do tend to use is just a little bit of glue tack just down this end of my bezel, underneath the bezel, so that it keeps this level, okay? Otherwise it'll be on a tilt and all of your resin will pour out. Okay, now I need to sit these somewhere completely flat, nice and level, but also somewhere that's not going to get a breeze, it's not going to get excessively hot or excessively cold, it's not going to get damp, and also somewhere where there's no animal fur or dust. Okay, and it will probably take between 24 to 36 hours for it to cure completely. You can keep going back to check on it, but try and avoid touching it with your fingers, because you will end up with your fingerprint in it if you touch it and it's still quite soft, because it will be very tacky. And then once it's completely hardened, you can remove it from your plate. You can use a pair of scissors or a pair of pliers to snip off any elements of resin that's got stuck to around the edges. You can also use a nail file, but if you do, please put a mask on, because the dust particles from resin can be quite dangerous to your lungs, so do be aware of that. And basically you can put almost anything in your resin. It's such a fun one to use. Photographs can go in it beautifully. You can also, you know, for bereaved people, hair and ashes can also go in it. I know it's not something that people often consider, but I often get asked, so that's perfectly acceptable to put those things in there. And there are also ways of colouring these things. If you come on our resin classes, we talk about all the ways to colour and all the things that we can put in our resin, and obviously you can ask lots and lots of questions about what you can put in your resin and what you can't. Okay, so next week I will be back and I'm going to do some more resin, and I have got, so I will be using these pieces next week. So we have got this To Die For crown, this beautiful little crown, and this resin pendant. So this one, actually, it's a mould, so when you take the pendant out, it's completely on its own. It has no bezel round it, and this little stick here creates the hole, which you can then put one of our beautiful bales through. And just to pique your interest, we'll be using those, but we will also be using these things inside it. So this is, I keep tropical fish, and this is one of the substrates that we use for our tropical fish, and it is clean, it doesn't smell of fish, but it looks beautiful in our pieces. The other thing I'm going to use is, I have some Sweet Poppy glitter here. Actually, if I take the lid off, you can see the colour better. So look at that beautiful glitter. And I also have some, some gorgeous, gorgeous gold foil. Okay, so we're going to use those in those pieces. At the moment, they're sitting on my windowsill, drying and curing, so I'll be able to bring them down and show you the finished pieces next week. So same time next week, 3:30, and I really, really look forward to seeing everybody next week.